since we are going to deal with Brecht, we will see what kind of new speculations and ideas and theories he has been injecting into the body of plays during these days. Remembering that this is happening at the beginning of the 20th century. Alongside the legitimizing of drama and theater arts, playwriting and performance studies as academic subject within institutions of higher education and have continued to exercise profound influence. Now in different departments, we have a theater department, which is devoted completely a 4-year course to theater. Drama is like paleontology, in which we study the fossils. The fossils here act as the play texts that remains after the full dramatic experience. The performance has died. There is no more performance. It has been done years ago. The evidence has forever receded from the thing itself. So writes theater scholar Joseph Roche, and we are extraordinarily extrapolating from the position of a few old bones, studying a fossil record that keeps most of the secrets of its incompletion. While it will, we try actually to do, and by going through the selected plays for this course, actually we try to rely mostly on those bones that have been missing in the text of the plays, and it will put flesh on them whenever possible by allusion to performance context, with the aim of giving the fullest possible meaning to these works as living drama. Plays are the end result of a complex web of forces, and the changes in the way plays were written in the late 19th century go hand in hand with the changes in the conditions of the performance and the staging. The introduction of the electricity into theater around 1880 is one example of this. The change that is ushered in from gaslight to electronic lighting radically altered the way plays were performed. So what actors could portray more subtle emotions, how to control an audience by plunging it into darkness, and made acting safer for the actors by reducing the risk of fire. It also created the fourth wall, whereby the stage is a room with the fourth wall removed, or rather the audience is the fourth wall. Silent. Unacknowledged. And this in turn affected the writing of plays with more psychologically developed characters and domestic interiors revealing the inevitable skeletons in the closet. A play like Henrik Ibsen's Ghosts, published in 1881, is the end result of all of these kinds of changes acting together, simultaneously enabling and created by more realistic acting, scenery, and lighting. Another example of how contingent plays are, how dependent on their generative theatrical circumstances, is the famous tarantella scene of Ibsen's A Doll's House, published in 1879. This moment when Nora dances almost out of control is seen as a vital episode in the play, wordlessly conveying Nora's psychological state and signaling the unbreathable societal pressure on women. We will talk about this when we are going through the Ghosts. We also will talk about other plays by Ibsen as well. Yet Ibsen apparently put it in the play because the actress who was playing Nora for its first production anywhere in Europe happened to be particularly skillful in dancing the tarantella, which is a kind of a dancing. Luck, opportunism, serendipity, expediency, practicality, call it what you want. It's a key component of drama and a reminder that some of the most enduring qualities of plays considered classic today has nothing to do with the text or indeed the playwright. So modern drama gives us powerful, indelible images. Two tramps beneath a bear tree, a woman up to her neck in the pile of earth, a peasant woman dragging a cart of goods. It has also given us new words like Pinterest, which is in the manner of writing the way Harold Pinter used to write, by bringing menace, unprecedented menace to the play without being apparent. One of the best examples of this serendipity comes from the play called R.U.R., written by two Czech brothers, Joseph and Karel Čapek, in 1923, warning about dangers of an increasing reliance on mechanization for the workers of tomorrow. Though few people read or see the play nowadays, it is out of fashion. It had left a powerful legacy through its coining of a single word that is now universally used: robot. Now let's talk about the nature of realism, naturalism, and symbolism in the theater. The 2 decades from 1880 to 1900, as we call it, fin de siècle, the end of the cycle of the Victorian period, are astonishing not just for the new ideas about drama and the radical changes in theater practice and playwriting, but for the pace of those developments. More changes and upheavals are packed into these 20 years than perhaps any other period of modern drama. from 1880 to 1900. Very few people originally saw some of the plays we now consider worth studying, like George Bernard Shaw's Widowers' Houses, which exposed the problem of a slum landlord in London. We have talked about it a little bit in the previous week, if you remember. In 1892, the play was given its premiere by the Independent Theatre, formed in part to get around the stage censorship before a tiny audience, a very few number of audience. In the same year, Charlie's Aunt, an entertaining romp that hardly anyone now reads or sees, enjoyed a run of nearly 1,500 performances. To put this in perspective, 100 performances is about the length of a respectable run. In a short introduction to modern drama, it is impossible to give equal attention to both kinds of plays, and such histories tend to favor the progressive and subversive over the popular and merely entertaining. But it is worth bearing in mind that for each play under discussion, there were dozens of plays like Charlie's Aunt, very popular among people. One of the unique features of modern drama is that some of the key performances took place in auspicious or ephemeral circumstances. Great reckoning in a small rooms. As director and scholar Herbert Blow reminds us that have taken on canonical status. Playwright and actresses Elizabeth Robbins recalled seeing the poverty-struck premiere of A Doll's House by Ibsen in London in 1889, with its little-known actors in a pooky, tiny theatre and a spare, rather dying audience. For her, this made it less like a play than like a personal meeting with people and issues that seized us and held us and wouldn't let us go. It is a paradox of theater history that many of the plays we now regard as pioneering were at the first fleeting and precocious affairs, and that in many cases performance precedes text. They go one step further, actually, than the text. Yet even as this new style of playwriting and production that Robbins is describing, realism was taking hold. Many playwrights were seeking ways of staving off the inevitable passivity that an invisible audience would fall prey to. Sitting quietly in the dark and watching events unfold, Lawrence Sinlick writes that because of the censorship across Europe and the self-protective nature of the theater management, the stage, as was its mandate, tended to endorse community values and reinforce the audience in its prejudices. Modern drama emerges through its attempts to shock the bourgeoisie, to provoke and outrage it, to prod it out of that passive and self-contented state. Yet the spectator, as Stug, motive had to be constantly renegotiated as bourgeoisie audiences became hip to the attacks playwrights lived at them and deftly absorbing each new shock could very quickly grow broad, as it was obvious with Bertolt Brecht's works. There were, in fact, earlier works for the stage, well before this period, that signals startlingly modern theoretically, yet don't fit into a too neat timeline of the modern drama that would have it started in 1880. One such example is George Bernard Shaw's, George Bichner's Wojcik, published in 1837. This unfinished fragment of a play, later to inspire the opera by Alban Berg, concerns a man driven to murdering his wife, partly through jealousy and partly through his extreme psychological state brought about by being the subject of a mad doctor's experiment in which he can only eat peas. The episodic nature of the play, consisting of discrete episodics rather than casually connected, organically linked scenes, as well as its naturalistic qualities of the character and setting, suggesting the struggle between humans and their environment, as well as their often ungovernable and violent impulses, are often invoked as proto-modernist. So the play seems 60 years ahead of its time. Similarly, Henrik Ibsen's Peer Gynt, published in 1867, seems presciently modern with its episodic structure and vivid anti-hero searching for and shrinking the concept of the selfhood by thyself enough. When he says, be thyself enough, proclaim the tools who lure peer into their subterranean world. And the rest of the play charts his adventures as he tries to come to terms with what it means to be oneself fully. Later we will see that in the works of Henrik Ibsen or Strindberg or Chekhov, although they are considered as realistic plays, but they are full of, as I have mentioned before, modern elements and traits as well. Peer Gynt is written in verse, as were so many plays of the period, but in the 1870s, Ibsen permanently changed the nature of drama by re-announcing poetry in favor of prose. He felt that writing in verse was out of sync with a modern literature that submitted problems to debate, as the influential Danish literary critic George Brandes puts it. Ibsen went against the idealism and dominating art and announced that what inspired him was the opposite, the dirges and sediments of one's own nature. What W.B. Yeats, the famous Irish poet and playwright, would call the fool rag and bone shop of the heart. Remember, we have considered his plays about Cuchulainn, which was a trilogy in the previous session. Modern playwrights have followed